everybody. And I see our regular, looks like there could be a couple of new people in here. So welcome everybody. And today I'm going to basically redo last week's webinar. So last week just felt like I didn't do a good job of explaining that function node, and today I've got a much better and easier to understand way of explaining the counting function node. So, but just before we get started, though, just for a couple of new people in the room here, just want to show you guys around our website a little bit, so we can show you guys how to get some support from us. So you can see here I have our homepage up, and the quickest way to get help is you can use our Contact Us page, and from there you can ask us any kind of question you have here. So you can see, just have your name, and we at least need your email, and then subject and the nature of your question there. And you'll see there's a book an appointment button, and I'll get back to this in just a moment. Now let me show you what's available under the BloodHound menu. So down here, here's all the categories to help you learn BloodHound. So we have a Getting Started page, and let me get that up. So on this page, they walk you through all the videos that we have. So we have a tutorial section. This will take you over to the tutorial section. I'll load that off to the side. And then the next section down here, Give Me More, is some more videos on each individual solver. And we'll take a look at that. And then also you'll notice on the right here, there is a reference section. So written material for each little component of BloodHound. So you'll see here are the individual solvers available, the logic nodes, and we're in the middle of writing up the function nodes, and so that should be added here hopefully in the next week or two. And so I'm going to load up one of these function node tabs as well, so we take a look at it. So let's see. Let me pick the support and resistance there. All right. So let me show you the tutorial section here. This is the first page we'd recommend you starting with. So it just kind of slowly introduces you into BloodHound's interface, and a couple of how-tos just to get you started. And then down here at the bottom, an introduction to the logic nodes and how they work, how they calculate. All right, so there, from these simple introductions, then the next step would be to go over to the Getting Down and Dirty, which is in the Give Me More section here. There's more information. And on here, we have some in-depth videos. So these are workshops that we did a while back explaining each of the function nodes here. All right, so you can see each of the function nodes that are listed, that are covered in this workshop. Right. And I just added another workshop, one that I did a little while back about building a system from start to scratch here. And then from there, there's a little tips and tricks section. Let me load that up. There's a handy little video here. If you're trying to figure out if a custom indicator will work with BloodHound, this video here will help you analyze that indicator to see if BloodHound can read any of the information that's shown on the screen from that indicator. So, and then just some other videos here on putting together some simple conditions there. And the ADX, the ADX is kind of a special indicator. It's a trending identification indicator, or a better way of saying that. So the ADX is used for identifying a trend. So it doesn't matter whether you're in a long trend or a short trend, the ADX always rises in its value. And so this video shows you how to use an indicator that only goes in one direction, whether the trend is up or down. So there's that, and then here's the written documentation. So I picked the support and resistance solver here. If you want to get to it directly, you go to BloodHound, learn BloodHound, and it's in the documentation section. And then you'll see on the right here the references to each individual solver and the logic nodes. So you can see, here's just the written documentation on how the solver works. But also down at the bottom of each of these is a video here. So this video here, like it says, it's one of the workshops. But this video will start you off. It'll jump forward in time on the video and start you off right exactly when this function node's being talked about or being explained in the video. So that way you don't have to watch the whole beginning part of the video. It'll just jump you straight to the support resistance solver. And that's the same for all of, and so that's the same for all of these solvers here. The video will just jump you forward to where I start talking about the solver. And then also down at the bottom, here are some written examples of how to use, some typical cases of how to use the particular solver. So just simple, clear written. You can click on the image and it'll expand so you can see how the solver is set up. All right, and then a chart image to kind of help explain what's going on as well. So each solver has some of these little lessons in them, or examples. All right. And then lastly, let's see where, back in the Give Me More section. At the bottom, here's a video on how to use Raven. So Raven is the strategy component that will submit your orders. And you can wrap it off with that. And then for anybody new, I would ask that you at least kind of go through the tutorial series here first, and then when you still have further questions and need help getting going, then let me get back to the Contact Us page. So after you've gone through the video tutorials at kind of a minimum, then feel free to book an appointment with me, and I can help you get started and get you going. And for you regular guys who have complex situations, you guys are already used to using this. So, all right, well, with that simple introduction, I will get started. Oh, let me pull this off to the side here. Oh, one more thing here. For those of you who use Skype, I have a Skype account here that I use for shark indicators. So if you see me online, then that means I'm available for help. So right now I'm going to turn myself off. So my Skype name is right up here on top, Zach White, S-I. So SI is for Shark Indicators. So feel free to add me on Skype, and if you see me, feel free to chat with me, start up a chat. So I do ask that you don't submit your questions by Skype. So that's just not a reliable way to submit your questions. because if I don't see your question, right, then with Skype it basically like disappears after a couple of days. So please just use this, for just kind of instant chat. No, don't submit your questions there. So, all right, thanks, guys. And so I'm just going to kind of jump right into it and start off where we started last week, and that was we were covering the signal counter. So the purpose of this function node, so let me just pull this down. So previously, 2 weeks ago, we went through the inverter, the long-short modifier, look back, and the signal blocker. So today we're going to start off with the signal counter. And basically the purpose of this is if you only, say like you only want the second or third, or fourth occurrence, fourth, like, let me just use something simple. So if you only want the second occurrence of a condition to, as kind of like a trigger, or you're permissive for a trade, for a signal, then that's what this signal counter is for. Is it will count, how many occurrences you're wanting, and then and so I have it set to 2, and so out of this function node, it would only give me a signal out on the second occurrence of a situation. So let me show you what I have set up here. So to demonstrate this, I'm using the stochastics here. And you can see right now, so I'm using this inflection solver. I'm using this inflection solver with the stochastics plugged into it. And so you can see that as the stochastic turns down, right, that solver is giving us a short, and as it turns up, the solver is giving us a long. And so what I want to do, so what my example is going to be is like here. So I'm going to count the second peak of the stochastics in the overbought and the oversold area. All right, so I only want a signal on this second peak right here, and I want to ignore this first peak right here. So that's what I'm going to try and demonstrate for you. And then later on, I'll show you how to use the reset function in there. And so we'll kind of build in a few system rules to this using the reset ability of that function node. And so, well, I'll just explain that when we get to it. All right. So, I'm going to plug the solver into the signal counter here. And so once again, so how I have it set up is I want to know when the second occurrence is, and I'm only going to wait for this second occurrence to happen within 15 bars. So the second hump here, the second peak, needs to occur within 15 bars of the first peak, or basically it's null. And the default output, let me stretch this up here. So the default output is set to, all right, give me a confidence value of 1 when it's counted, right? And so I have it in digital mode right now. So actually, let me put it in analog mode. It kind of helps debug your system to first use this in analog mode. So let me connect the function node solver up, and so let's see here. So the bottom, you can see here on the chart, I have 2 instances of BloodHound. So the bottom one is going to give me the condition signal. So you can see already it's marking the second peak right here, and I'm not getting a signal on this first peak. And I'm going to set this other instance of BloodHound to kind of mark the inflection point. So let me so let's see here, plug that in there. All right. So we can see it here. This BloodHound here up on top is marking all the inflection points of the stochastic. And so right here, when we get this first inflection right here, we can see the that function node is giving us a value of 0.5. Right, since we're counting up to 2, since we're counting 2 occurrences in, let's keep in mind we're in analog mode and we're looking for the second occurrence. So the first occurrence is going to be worth a half. Right, so 1 divided by 2, what we're counting up to, is a half. And then when we get to the second occurrence, then we get a value of 1 out on the solver. So let me kind of slide this over. There. So we can see the flag here on the right counted to -1 for our second occurrence. And so we can also see right here this second occurrence of the peak right here, right? We can see this was marked, and that's because of we got the first peak here, right? So here's our first inflection, and then here's our second inflection point marked right here. So right now you can see I don't have a filter in place to make sure that these peaks happen in the overbought area. So I'll add that condition here in just a moment. And we can see here with the stochastics in the oversold area, here's our first peak right here, and then our second peak occurs, and we get the signal out from the function node. So, and remember, I have so I have this function node only looking back 15 bars. All right. So this let me see here. Just a sec while I take a look. Let's see here. All right. Yeah, so since we're only looking back 15 bars, yeah, I'm guessing that the separation between these two must be more than 15 bars here. So, yeah, because we can see as from this one, let me move the chart over. So if we're starting at this inflection point here, the second one happens within 15 bars, and then we keep going along, and now you can see there's no output. There's no long output from that function node. So, and that's because the 15 bar count has been exceeded. And then as we step forward, so here's another long inflection, and the counting begins on the function node. We'll step forward. So I'm just looking at the longs right now. We'll step forward. And then we get a second long inflection. And so this did not occur within the look back period. And you know, that does look like it's within 15 bars, doesn't it? Let me hit refresh just in case. So, okay. Yep. So let me just keep stepping forward here. All right, and so here's another long inflection, and then happened within the 15 bar look back. And then the solver gives us, all right, our signal out. So next, I'm going to pair it up so that we only get these long inflections when we're in the oversold area, and we only get short inflections when we're in the overbought area. So let me bring up the interface again. So I'm using two instances of BloodHound so that we can see, you know, so in this top instance, we can see the data, you know, the conditions that are going into the function node, just to help it visualize what's going on here. All right, and oh, looks like I'm missing a solver here. Oh. Okay, let me just name this guy here. And actually, yeah, let me show you a little trick, a little tip here, tip of the day. And so what I'm going to do is, you can see that, excuse me, I'll get a drink of water here. So you can see I've been modifying this instance of BloodHound here. You can see I have an AND node on here. I have this extra solver on here. And so this one is a little out of date, it's a little behind. So to get the two in sync, what I'm going to do is save this template and then go back to the other one and load it up. So you can see the solver showing up here on top. Load it, and there we go. And it drops in that solver, dropped in that AND logic node. So, all right. And let me take a look at this solver here. And, oh, that's right. Sometimes BloodHound is going to have us refresh the chart when we load up a template here. So there we go. So let me get my interfaces lined up again. Okay, so the top version of BloodHound here, what we're looking at is this threshold solver, right? This threshold solver, and we want to know when we're in the overbought or oversold area, and so we can see it's being marked right here. All right. So as soon as the stochastic dipped down by 1 bar, right, we get a long signal out of it. And so I have the same thing down here. So I'm going to plug both of these solvers in. Right, so what I've done, which you can see here now, is that I'm not getting all of the inflection points marked. Right, so this inflection point's not marked, this one's not marked. Only when we're in the overbought areas or the oversold areas. So now I'm only going to be counting the inflection points when I'm in the oversold areas or the overbought areas. All right, so this top version of BloodHound here, right, is only marking the overbought and oversold. So now I'll take this filtered condition and connect it into the counting node and plug it into the result. And now let's take a look. All right, so now we can see here's our second valley of the stochastic in the oversold area, and it's marked here. And let's kind of scroll through. Actually, let me scroll back and see if there's any others. Conditions. Oh, let's see. Here we go. So we can see here is our first inflection point right here, marked on top, and then here's our second one. And you'll see that there's multiple. All right, since we have a look back period of 15 bars, right? That solver is going to be giving us a signal out of it for that 15 bar length. And so it's basically from this first occurrence back to here is 15 bars, and then when we get to the 16th bar, when it's looking back 15 bars, it only sees as one occurrence of this inflection. All right, so you can see the output drops back down to a half, meaning that only one occurrence has been counted. So let's take a look at this guy here. This would be a good example of showing like 3 occurrences and maybe 4 occurrences. Yeah, so we can see we have our first short inflection here, second, third, and fourth. So let's play with this guy, and we'll set it to count 3 occurrences. So I'm going to move the chart forward so we can step forward in time. So here's our first occurrence. You can see the solver is giving us an output of a third. We'll step forward until the second inflection. So here's the second inflection. So now you can see the solver steps up to 2/3 for its output. And then here's the third occurrence. And then the solver gives us a value of 1 out for the signal. Keep stepping forward. All right, so from the first inflection point right here to here is basically that's 15 bars. And so when it's looking, so when the function node is looking back 15 bars, it only sees these two occurrences. So let's step forward again, and I know we get another one here. Nope. Okay, there's our fourth one, but when it's looking back 15 bars, it only sees this other one here. So we only have two short inflections within the 15-bar look back. So if I set this to count 4, we know we have 4 conditions. Problem is they don't happen within 15 bars of each other. So if I up this, let's see if 20 is enough. No, not quite. Looks like maybe 25. There we go. Okay. So we can see when we have the first occurrence, since we're counting to 4, each occurrence is worth a quarter or 1/4. So there's a quarter. And then we get a second occurrence, and then it counts up to a half. Our third one. And our fourth one. All right. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another requirement to the counting node. So let me find an example here. So this white dashed line represents the 50% on the stochastics, the 50 value. And so I'm going to use that to reset the counting, to basically nullify the counting. So just need to scroll forward on my chart and find a good example. Okay, maybe I can use this area right in here as my example. Let me draw a circle in here. Okay. And sorry, just trying to get my color set here. All right. So white should be pretty easy to see, hopefully. All right, so you can see within here, I have this peak right here that's in the overbought area, and I have a second one that's in the overbought area. And so let me set the function node back to only count two occurrences here. And I'm going to knock my look back down to, I think, 20 and see if that still works. No, looks like I need 25. Okay. All right. So right here, here's our first occurrence. And let me put a little, mark this guy. All right, so there's our first occurrence. And then obviously this is our second occurrence. And you can see the stochastic dips down below the 50 mark here. So I'm going to add this as a reset connection or reset condition. Sorry, that will essentially nullify counting these two peaks here. Right. So essentially, I only want. Let's see here. Yeah, so here's a good example. So right here, here's our first long inflection and our second long inflection, right? So we're getting a signal out, and we can see the stochastic only pulls back a little bit. So this is what I want to be looking for. It's just a little pullback on our stochastic before it creates the second one. But if the stochastic pulls back too much, then I want that to essentially nullify the counting. So I want the counting to start over when the stochastic breaches the 50 line. So this solver here I already have set up. This is a inflection solver. So this threshold solver here is just looking at the 50. Right, it's looking at the 50 of the stochastic. And so as far as my outputs here, let me show you how this is looking. Oops. I didn't mean to plug that in there. So let me show you how I've chosen to set the output of this threshold solver up. So I could have done it in both ways, but I've decided that when the stochastic here is above 50 to give me a short. Right? So you can see I have a short output when the stochastic is above 50, and as soon as it dips below 50, I have a long output. So that I could do either way. I mean, if I was above 50, I could have chosen to have that solver give me a long output. Doesn't really matter, just as long as you pick one direction. And so here I have the same solver down here. Right, there you go. So we can see the outputs are the same. So I'm going to use this. So I'm going to take this node and plug it into the reset here. And now let's take a look at the reset parameters down here. Let me open this up so we can read all the text better. All right, so we have, so I'm using the reset opposite signal. And since all right, let me get this clear in my head again. so I can explain it. So we can see that right in here, right, we're getting a long signal out. So when the stochastic is inflecting up, that's giving us a long signal. And so I'm using a short to reset this condition if the stochastic breaches the 50 line. So let me come over here. Right, so we can see on these on the stochastic here, we're getting a short when the stochastic inflects down. Right, so we can see that it's being marked right here, and it's being marked right here, marking this inflection down. And so I'm using the opposite signal to reset the counting function node. So we can see right here the stochastic breaks below the 50, right? And so we're getting a long, and so that's opposite of the short signal that we're looking for. So I'm using the reset on opposite signal. All right, so we have a short signal coming in to the counting node, and this long, or this opposite signal, is resetting it. And so we can see here, we're not getting our second count because it's getting reset by this long signal coming into the reset point. So if I turn this off, now we can see the short coming into the function node did not get reset, and then as soon as we get our second inflection down, right, then the function node is giving us the second count signal out. So if I turn this reset back on, there we go. So bottom line is this long, the second long valley here, we got a signal out on it, but this second short inflection, we did not get a signal out because it broke the 50. So there's kind of an example. So there's my example for today on this counting node. So I hope that came across a lot better than last week. And so let me put this in digital mode, and it really cleans it up, makes it a lot easier to visualize. So let's scroll down and scroll through here, and let's see. Now this one didn't get into the overbought area, but here we go. So we got two inflections in the overbought, and we got our short condition met, and we did not breach the 50 here. All right, so we did breach the 50, and the second count did not go through. And there's our long, our second valley here to give us a long. All right, let's take a look at this right here. Take a look at this area. So I believe we got 1, 2, and yeah, so this one is not in the overbought area. Yeah, so there's our second our second peak, giving us the second count and our signal out. That one worked good. And so on this one, I believe that's our first one. And so this is our second one. And this one just kept on going, because it looks like we got a third one there and a fourth one. So the counting node just held on to this signal all the way to this point, and then we can see what happened is our reset. See the value going into the reset is a long, and so it just stopped the signal. So as soon as the stochastic broke the 50, it killed the signal. It killed the function node signal coming out. Let's see. All right, probably the same thing here. So we got our first valley and the second valley here. And so we started getting our signal out, and then what happened is the stochastic crossed the 50, and so the reset function on that node ended the signal. All right, so with that, I see there's some comments or questions. Let me take a look here. Let's see, Randy said, saw your last real world YouTube video. Real world. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Randy, but thanks for the compliment. Let's see, Richard, can a method be based only on the previous price bar? No indicator. Can a method be based only on the previous price bar? No indicator. I'm not sure what you mean by no indicator, Richard, but you know, if you want to look at a previous price bar, I'll show you how to do that. So some of the solvers have a displacement, right? So let me kind of show you at the on the indicator window here. So like in the typical SMA, well, actually all indicators have a displacement, right? So this is a part of NinjaTrader's parameters here. So you can displace all indicators, which in a sense is kind of like looking back a bar or 2 bars, whatever you set the displacement to. So if I set it to 1, it's like looking back 1 bar, right? So it takes the previous bar 1 bar back value and displaces it forward onto the current bar. And so if you're talking about, you know, a method, when you say a method, I don't know, I'm guessing you're meaning an indicator. I'm not sure. Maybe you mean a solver. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. So if you're talking about a solver, solvers have this displacement in them as well. Let me close that up and take a look at some solvers here. So this is the threshold solver, and so you can see this displacement. So some of the solvers in the indicator section have a displacement. So that way you can displace the indicator. So in effect, you can look at a previous bar's value for that indicator. So let's see. Oh, so okay, Richard. So you're saying entry based on where the previous bar open and close. let's see. So Richard, let's see, you could be, well, here's one way. So if you're wanting to know whether the bar closed up or down, we have a bar direction solver, pretty simple to use. So you can see on these down bars here, we're getting a short output, and on this up bar right here, we're getting a long. So then we get another short because this is a down bar, and we get 3 up bars, we're getting a long. But if you're wanting to say, like, compare the open price to something or the closing price to something, then we have another way to do that. Let's see. So we can bring up a comparison solver. Let me plug this in here. And so it's this comparison solver. I can say, so an indicator, right, so the comparison solver is essentially used for comparing 2 different indicators, which you can also compare price. So I'm going to take a shortcut and I'm going to use the closing price. So I'm going to compare the closing price. And you can see when I use the closing price, this displacement parameter goes away. Oops. All right. And then the indicator B, oops, yeah, I'm going to leave it on indicator, and I'm going to use an indicator that comes with BloodHound called Chameleon. And what Chameleon does is, you can see it has all of the price types here. All right, so we have the high, low, mid, and open. So I'm going to use the open and compare the closing price to the open. And so the default output for this solver is, we can see that when A is greater than B, in other words, A is the closing price. So when the closing price is greater than B, which is the open, right? I have it set to the SI Chameleon open, then we're going to get a long output. And for the shorts, when A, being the closing price, is less than the opening price by 0 ticks, then we'll get a short. And let me stretch my chart out here, make it a little easier to see. So we can see when we have the, so essentially this is doing the same thing as what the bar direction solver is doing, right? So the closing price up here is greater than the opening price, so we're getting a long. Now I could compare the closing price to the previous opening price. So I can set this displacement to 1. So I'm displacing the opening price by 1. So in effect, what I'm looking for is I'm comparing the, let's see, let me find an example here. I'll use, this bar. So I'm comparing the closing price to the previous, to the previous opening price up there. And we can see the closing price was less than the previous opening price, so it gave us a short. So let's see, let's see. So So Richard, okay, let me read your comments here. Okay, so Richard says, as an example, current bar's wick overlaps the previous bar's open. Place the entry at the previous bar's close. I'm not sure what you mean by place the entry, but we can take a look at, we can compare. Let me read your example again. So we want the current bar's wick. Which wick do you mean, Richard? Is it the high or low? Overlaps the previous bar's open. Overlap. So I'll just pick. I'll pick the low, I guess. Yeah, so I'll show you how to like compare the high and the low to the previous bar's open. So right now I'm showing you how to compare the close. The current bar is closed to the previous bar's open. And so if you want to compare something other than the closing price, I'm going to put it back on the indicator, and I'm going to change my indicator to the SI chameleon. And so let's say if the high is greater than the open, I'll get a long, and if the low is less, let's see, if the low is less than the open, I'll get a short. Actually, let me just kind of keep this example simple here. So I'll just say, so depending on where the high is compared to the previous open, we'll get a long or a short. Let's just keep it simple. So, all right, so we can see the high. Let me take a, let's see. Let me pick a bar that actually has a wick. So there's our high, and there's our open. Right, let me stretch these out a little bit more. Right, so we can see the wick, the high, is greater than the previous open, so we have a long condition. And let's see. So it looks like on this bar here, the high there is lower than the previous open. They actually kind of look the same. It must be just a tick difference. Yep. Let's stretch this out here. Actually, they're the same. Right, so we're comparing the open, the high to the open, and they're actually the same in this situation, but we're getting a short. And that's probably just due to how the solver set up here. Let's see, it could be a rounding. Well, yeah, see, we're not requiring. So let me require the difference to be by at least 1 tick. All right. So I'm going to set this to 0. sets this to 0. And it's interesting. Sometimes the parameter text doesn't update. So let me just click on a different node, and there we go. So now we can see when A being the high is greater than the open by 1 tick, we'll get a long, and vice versa. When the high is less than the open by 1 tick, we'll get a short. All right, so there. Yeah, so now since they're equal, there's no output from that solver. All right, let me read the comments here and see if I'm getting close to what Richard is asking. So Richard makes the comment, using better Renko bars. You know, Richard, it doesn't matter which bar. Doesn't really matter which bar. A bar is a bar. A bar just represents, 4 different prices. So it really doesn't matter which bar you use, whether the minute bars or range bars or open bars. It's a bar just tells you the high, low, open, and close. Just four pieces of data. So you're saying it won't work on any other than wicked Renko bars. So Richard, it kind of looks like if you're trying to determine if, since you're needing to use Renko bars, I'm assuming that you're needing, you're kind of looking for a price reversal on the Renko bars. My Renko bars got overwritten. My wicked ones got overwritten by some, I loaded up so many different bar types here. All I have is the better one that's showing up right now. So I can load that one up. And actually, this is oil. So let me put it on 5 here. 5 brick size. All right, so let's take a look here. So we have the high, right, is less than the open, and so we have so we get a short output from that solver. In this case, we have the high here is greater than the open back there, so we have a long condition. So I guess, to kind of, I think to get back to, what is really the core of your question. So if you want to compare like a current price value, you can use a displacement of 0, and if you want to compare it to a previous price value, use a displacement of 1, or if you want to compare, 2 bars back, you can put 2 in there and compare it to 2 bars back. So Richard, I hope that kind of gets to the gist of your question. So, all right, so Richard's saying a better example is the 1222 bar. Ah, yeah, there we go. All right. So we have the high. Oh, wait, 22. I'm not really seeing anything kind of special. I could really change it up if I compared it. Like if I compared this high to the previous close, I mean, I wouldn't get a short, I'd get a long. So there we go. So the high, so we're looking at the high, the current high being greater than the previous close. Interesting. So even though price is coming down, all of these highs are higher than the previous close. Right. Looks like that's happening a lot. And so we can see on these bars that are not painted, that don't have the painted background or the racing stripes, we can see that the high of the bar is actually equal to the previous close. So, all right, so Richard's also given another example. So, all right, let me go back to that bar here. All right. So it's saying, see how the wick overlapped the previous bar's open. You would enter at that previous bar's close, knowing it may not come back to pick you up. So, all right. So it looks like, Richard, you're kind of using this as one of your conditions to do some discretionary trading. So, all right. All right. Let me take a look at some other questions here. I'll take some of these comments off the board. So let's see, Oscar wrote in here, when will all this new elements will have written instructions? So yeah, Oscar, I had previously mentioned earlier at the beginning of the beginning of this workshop, in about a week or two. So I've gotten about a quarter to a third of these things written up here. So hopefully pretty soon. Let's see, Randy's written in here, to reference no indicator and use the last bar would have to use SI Chameleon. Thanks, Randy. Okay, I'm just clearing off some of these comments on the board here. All right. So Richard's following up is saying 912-ish is a good example. 912-ish. So Richard, I'm not sure if our times match up. I'm on Mountain Time. So 912-ish. So I'm guessing you're talking. Must be talking about this bar here. So we're comparing the high to the previous bar's open. Let me see. How do I have, oh, that's right, I'm comparing it not to the open, I had it set to the, I had it set to the close. Let me put it back on the open here. There. Yeah, and this guy, we can see the high is just a tick or two less than the open. So, you know, as far as, you know, Richard, you were making comments about, you know, an entry price level. So, you know, BloodHound doesn't provide you price levels, so it's not a mathematical calculating indicator like a moving average is. All right, it's just BloodHound is about building conditions, and also, you know, conditions such as value being, you know, greater than or less than type stuff. So so BloodHound's more about, you know, looking at your you know, certain indicator conditions or price conditions occurring to, you know, to let you know whether your, you know, your conditions are your trading rules are telling you that, you know, you should be looking for long trades or short trades, you know, and the actual entry price would be, you know, up to the trader as a discretionary trader. And later on, when we come out with Falcon, then that would allow you to you know, automate a specific price entry. So all right, so yeah, Richard's saying that this stuff is very confidential. So yeah, so Richard, you know, this is a public training forum. So if you have anything confidential, I'd recommend not typing it in here. So this is, you know, if you have something confidential, then, you know, use our contact us support page, and, you know, put your information in there, and just let us know it's confidential. We won't use it as an example. All right. Definitely don't give us anything confidential in these training workshops. So they are for public, you know, public training of BloodHound. All right. Well, guys, a lot of you guys are pretty quiet today. So it's 11:45. So I'm just gonna wrap it up with just that one. You know, we're just leaving it at this the one counting node, and so next week we'll continue on to the signal extender. So does anybody have any questions regarding the signal counter here? I'll just wait a moment, see if any questions pop in. So I will let you know that Jeremy didn't join us today because he's still working on the divergence indicators, trying to get as much time into it as he can, and he's also working on some minor bug fixes. So all right, well, guys, thanks for joining us today, and I'll see you next week with the signal extender. All right. All right, Jeremy, any last words? Any comments before we wrap this up? I'll take that as a no. All right, guys. Thanks, and have a good rest of your week. Have a good Valentine's tomorrow. Make sure you treat that lady right. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.